Nami's voice, laced with concern but trying to sound playful, rang out, "Zoro! Don't go that way alone." Zoro shot her a sharp glance, irritation flickering in his eyes. "I can handle myself," he growled. "No one needs to come with me." With a stubborn resolve, he marched into the dense forest. The towering trees soon swallowed him whole, and before long, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his mind. He stopped, realizing he could no longer tell which direction he was heading. Just as doubt began to creep in, a soft, trembling voice broke through the silence. "Help me! Someone, please help me!" the voice cried, filled with despair. Zoro's expression hardened, and without a second thought, he began moving toward the sound, his senses sharp and alert. Zoro soon spotted a little girl standing alone, lost in the dark, eerie forest. "This isn't a safe place for a kid," he muttered, his eyes narrowing in concern. The girl looked up at him, startled and teary-eyed. Did you come to save me and take me back to my mother?" Her voice trembling with hope. Zoro hesitated for a moment before replying. "Yeah, I guess so." Her expression darkened. "But you can't," she whispered, Zoro's brow furrowed. "Why not?" he asked, his tone sharp with suspicion. The girl's eyes glimmered with something unsettling as she spoke in a chilling voice. "Because you're going to die tonight." In an instant, her small, innocent form twisted and transformed into a creepy-looking woman, her face warped with malevolence. Zoro instinctively reached for his swords, but before he could draw them, the creepy woman attacked with terrifying speed. Her cold, bony fingers wrapped around his arm, and Zoro winced as her sharp nails dug into his skin. He fought back, swinging his swords with all his strength. But even though he landed hits, it was like nothing could hurt her. With every swing, he felt his energy slipping away, and the forest around him seemed to get darker, the shadows closing in. "You're strong," she whispered, her voice echoing in his mind. "But not strong enough. The forest owns you now." Zoro's vision started to blur, and a strange, dark force surged through his body. He staggered, his breath growing heavier. He suddenly realized his body didn't feel like his own anymore. Nami and Luffy, worried after not seeing him for a while, finally found him. He stood completely still, his swords at his side. Nami let out a sigh of relief. "Zoro, there you are. What happened?" But when Zoro turned to face them, something was wrong. His once determined eyes were now cold and lifeless. The woman's curse had taken him. Luffy stepped forward, confused but ready. "Zoro, what's wrong?" Zoro said nothing, his body moving on its own. He raised his sword slowly. "Get back!" he whispered, his voice distant as if coming from deep inside him. I can't stop it!" Nami's heart broke as she understood what had happened. "No, Zoro, don't do this." But it was too late. Zoro, fully controlled by the curse, charged at them. Luffy, tears forming in his eyes, barely dodged and grabbed Nami, pulling her out of harm's way. "I don't want to hurt you, Zoro," Luffy said, his voice shaking with sadness. "But you're not yourself anymore." Nami's tears flowed freely now. "Zoro, please come back. Please." Zoro's body moved to strike again, but this time, Luffy knew he had no choice. With a heavy heart, he hit Zoro hard, knocking him to the ground. Zoro tried to stand, but his strength was gone, drained by the curse. Lying on the forest floor, barely able to move, Zoro looked up at Nami as she rushed to his side. Her tears fell onto his face. "Zoro, I'm so sorry." For a brief moment, the curse loosened its grip, and Zoro's eyes softened. He looked up at Nami and Luffy, his gaze filled with sadness, but also a quiet acceptance. A weak but genuine smile spread across his lips, though his strength was fading fast. "Don't blame yourselves," he whispered, his voice trembling. I wasn't strong enough." He coughed. Nami, tears streaming down her face, clutched his hand, her heart aching. Zoro's eyes flickered, and with one last breath, he whispered, "Thank you for saving me from becoming a lifeless monster." His smile remained, gentle and peaceful, as his body went still. Nami sobbed uncontrollably, her hands shaking as she held him, while Luffy, his own tears silently falling, knelt beside his fallen friend. Zoro's final smile, though bittersweet, was filled with a sense of release. Even in his last moment, he had found peace knowing his friends had freed him from the curse. The forest, once filled with danger, now seemed to fall silent in grief. They had lost their swordsman, their best friend, but in his final breath, ZORO had found freedom.